Nation. It was probably somebody went on strike.
Truthfully.
Where's he going?
He went to Puerto Rico.
Oh, I don't know if they have that. They all go to Puerto Rico.
Okay. The next section basically involves solving for an unknown. So let's go back and refresh your mind on how to solve for an unknown, the old-fashioned way that we did. Okay, let's say we have 2x plus 4 equals 20. Okay? You're like, oh yay! Good! I like doing this stuff. Okay, how do I solve for the x? What do I get rid of first? Subtract 4. Now all of a sudden y'all are awake. Okay, so I have 2x is equal to 16. Now what do I do?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. And my answer is 8. You're like, yay! Okay, finally something back to this. Okay, this is very similar. It's very similar to this, but it involves your radicals. And what I want you to remember is when we learned how to do that, we learned how to do the opposite of what was there. So if this 4 is added, I'm going to subtract it or add a negative 4. If this 2 is multiplied by the x, I'm going to divide to get the x by itself. Well, the opposite of something having a square root, to get rid of a square root, you square it. If something is squared, the way you get rid of it is you take the square root. Those are opposites of each other. So it's the same concept. It's just it has roots in the problem. So let's say I have this. X minus 4 equals x on the square root of 3. Okay, I have an equal sign in there and I want to solve for the x. Well, I'm not crazy about that square root. Can't do a whole lot. If I could divide both of those by the x, I would go ahead and do that. But it's really not going to help me to do that. So I'm going to leave the x there. I want to get rid of the square root. So the first step I'm going to take is I'm going to square both sides. Okay? If you hate FOIL, I'm sorry, because we're right back at it. Okay? I'm going to square this side. Now that does not mean x squared minus 16. It means I have to do out x minus 4 times x minus 4. Okay? On this side, both the x is squared and the square root of 3 is squared. What do I get when I square the x? Trick question. What do I get when I square the x? X squared. Okay, not really hard. Okay, what do I get when I square the square root of 3? 3. Okay, you with me so far? Okay, that is the same thing as saying, if you're confused, square root, I'm doing this, because I'm squaring both, right? I'm taking this and I'm multiplying it by itself. So x times x is my x squared. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is my 3. Okay, you with me? All right, now I got to do FOIL on this side. First, x times x, x squared. Outside, negative 4x. Inside, negative 4x. Last, plus 16. Now, we're going to stop right there. Does everybody see where I am? You understand how I went from here to here? Everybody? Okay. I can combine that center section right there. You with me so far? Okay. Because I have squares, I want to get everything on one side. Okay? Anytime I see an x squared, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to subtract that, and I'm going to get a 2x squared, right? I'm going to add the 8x, and I'm going to subtract the 16. Everybody with me? I just moved everything over to one side. That's all I did. Can I factor anything out? A 2. Okay? I can go 2 right? Just makes it easier, smaller numbers. How do I get rid of that 2? I divide. What's 0 divided by 2?
0.
0. So it really doesn't affect it, okay? So then I have x squared plus 4x minus 8. How do I solve if I have something like that? I got to do those 2 sets of parentheses. I got to factor it, okay? Now this is where the earlier part of the chapter where a bunch of you just blew off the factoring part. Well, guess what? It's coming back to bite you now, okay? On page...
I thought you said that this was similar to what we used to.
It's similar to solving it. On page 274 is where we talked about the different factoring things. Okay, now that was on your last test, but I told you that factoring continues from this point on. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull it up here so we can write on it. I have x squared plus 4x minus 8 equals 0. I'm going to unfoil this. Remember, that's that term we came up with. Okay, it's the opposite of FOIL. This times this gives me that. So what do I put here and here? X. This times this gives me that. What do I put there and there?
2 and 4.
2 and 4. Okay? It might be 1 and 8, but I doubt it. Okay, now I have to check outside. 4x. Inside. 2x. Is there any way for me to get a 4 out of that? No. Okay? If I put an 8 and a 1 there, is that going to make any difference? No. Now, prior to this spot, we probably said, this can't be done. It's prime. Forget it. We're going to not go. We can't do that. You can do the quadratic formula on this. But I'm going to tell you something else we're going to do. Okay? I'm going to come back to this. Okay? I'm going to do it an easier way, I think. Because y'all don't think this is easy. I'm looking at your faces. You don't think it's easy?
No.
Okay, I'm going to back it up. I'm going to
I'm
back
just
it up.
trying to figure out what you're suggesting.
All right, let me try another method, okay? Another method, just based on your faces, okay?
I thought it was easy.
You thought it was easy? You were following me? Okay, we're eventually gonna have to do it that way.
I thought it was
Okay.
easy. I was just trying to figure out where you're trying to go from
Our goal is to get the x by itself, right? Okay, so let's do it this way. I have an x here and I have an x here. So let's put those on the same side. Okay, before we worry about the square roots. So I'm gonna go x minus x on the square root of 3. And then let me take that 4 to the other side. So I'm just gonna rearrange it. Okay, you with me so far? Okay, y'all look more with me now. So maybe this would be a better way to do it. These two, do they have anything in common? What do they have in common? An x. So I'm going to pull the x out. Okay, so I'm going to do the opposite of distributive property. Okay, you with me? X times what gives me x? Right? Okay, x times what gives me x on the square root of 3? Right? Because this times this gives me this. Now, y'all still, okay, you with me? You are or you aren't? Okay. All right, let's stop right there. Does everybody see what I've done? Okay, no. Okay, first thing I did was I just rearranged it to get the x's on the same side. You know how sometimes you got to put your variables together? Okay, I needed this x and this x on the same side, which means I took the 4 over there. So this second step, I just rearranged that and put the x's together. Okay, yes, no, maybe? You with me? Bella, you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I look at, this is a binomial. What they have in common is an x. They both have an x in it. So I pull the x on the outside, and then I do the opposite of distributive property. This times this gives me this. X times 1 gives me x, right? X times the square root of 3 gives me x on the square root of 3. Okay, so now everybody's, and I just kept bringing the 4 down. I didn't do anything for it. I want to solve for the x. The x is multiplied by that. How do I get the x by itself? Divide, actually, I'm not gonna divide the x, but I'm gonna divide this other thing. I'm gonna get rid of it. So I'm gonna divide that. Okay? What I do to one side, I gotta do the other side. Would you agree with that? Okay, so right now, I'm at this. X equals 4 over 1 minus the square root of 3. Can I leave it like that? What do I have to do?
Multiply it by 1 plus the square root
I
of
have to multiply it by the conjugate. Okay, on the bottom, that means I just do Florida, right? First and last. So when I do first, I get 1. When I do last, I get minus 3, right? On the top, I'm going to do distributive property. So that's going to give me 4 plus 4 on the square root of 3. What am I going to have on the bottom?
-2.
-2. So I've got 4 plus 4 on the square root of 3, and I have a -2 on the bottom. Then I need to look here, here, and here. Can I divide them all by the same thing? No, I'll divide them all by the -2. So that's going to give me a -2 plus a -2 on the square root of 3. And that's going to be my answer. Does that make more sense than the other one?
No.
Where did I lose you?
I don't even know.
Okay, that's why I asked all the way through. I kept asking, are you with me? Are you with me? Are you with me? Because I wanted to know where I lost you. Okay? So let me try that again. Okay. To go from this is my problem. To go from this step to this step, I rearranged my problem. You understand that one? Okay. Then I factored out the x to get the x by itself. My whole goal is to get the x by itself. So I factored it out and I did just the opposite of distributive property. So I had to figure out this times this would give me this, and this times this would give me that. I had to do that. Well, this is multiplied by the x. Remember, at the end, I want x equals something. So this is keeping that x from being by itself. If this is multiplied by the x, the way that I get rid of it is I divide, okay? What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. This crosses out. I'm just left with the x, and I have 4 over 1 minus the square root of 3. Why can I not leave it like that? Because I can't have a square root on the bottom. It's against math law. So the way that we learned to get rid of that when I had a square root with a binomial is we multiplied by its conjugate.
So we're putting that into what we just did.
Exactly. That's coming right back, okay? That's why there's no sense in having a overall end of the year test, because you guys have to remember everything that you learned to do the next stuff. Okay, so I multiply by the conjugate here. What I do to the bottom, I also have to do to the top, okay? On the bottom, if I'm multiplying conjugates together, I just do first and last. So I do 1 times 1, which is 1. I do the negative square root of 3 times the negative square root of 3, which is -3. I could write that plus -3 if I wanted, okay? On the top, I distributed 4 times 1, 4 times the square root of 3, okay? That brought me to this spot. All I did was I did 1 minus 3, -2. Then I look to see if all 3 of those can be divided by the same thing. I kind of want to get rid of the bottom is what I want to do if I can. Okay, so they all can be divided by -2. So 4 divided by -2 is -2. 4 divided by -2 is -2. -2 divided by -2 is 1. If you want to put a 1 underneath it, you can, but you don't need it. Okay, let's do another one. I think that way is easier than the way that I started to show you. Because at least half of you look like you understand.
When you explained it, I understand, but I didn't understand. what you
Anytime you see something the first time, it makes it harder. Okay, this one's very similar to what we just did. You want to do it?
Yes.
Go ahead and try it.
Oh.
Try it, done just like the last one. So if you wrote down the last one, you should have it.
That's a 2, right?
Yes, that is a 2, the square root of 2. First thing you want to do is put your x's all on one side together. I'm going to do it up here, so don't look back up here until you're ready to see the answer. Can you see that blue? Yeah. Okay.
I was confused how to,
Get rid of the negative.
with all the ones,
Yeah.
so this is where I got.
Okay. You're there. Okay. Except for. Okay, I don't know where the negative came on the bottom, because that should have been positive. 1 times 1 is positive 1. First time.
I was
minus.
thinking of that as well.
Okay, and then so that's where that negative, so that makes that a negative 1, which then I'm dividing to those other two things, which changes them to make them positive. That's the only difference. Make sense? Somewhat?
Can't you take the square root of 2?
I cannot. Well, it's 1.712 something other. Okay, I don't know what it is. It's a long number. It's a irrational number.
I did everything right, but I just wasn't thinking when I did the
Yeah.
when I did the foil. I guess I wasn't thinking when I
Gotcha.
did that.
I tried to take the square root. It's 1.17.
4.41.
I forgot that row was negative.
5, 6.
Okay, let's talk through it here. Okay, the first thing I did is I moved this to this side, okay, to get my x's together. Then I factored out the x, leaving me with 1 minus the square root of 1, because x times 1 is x times the square root of 2 is x on the square root of 2, okay? Then I want that x by itself, and this is multiplied by it. So to get rid of something that's multiplied, I divide. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side, okay? This cancels out, so I come up here and I have x is equal to negative 1 over 1. What's that odd?